Hi guys, we're back on the main stage. Thanks for joining us. We've got now our last speaker of the KCOM Innovation Hothouse. Last but certainly not least, Jon Last from NashTech, who's going to give us a really great presentation about the kind of delivery choices that are open to organisations when they get to the stage where they're actually going to start implementing some of their ideas and the pros and cons of those choices. So over to you, Jon, to chat with the team.
Great, thanks very much, everyone. So, hi, I'm Jon Last. I'm head of UK delivery in NashTech. This means I'm accountable for getting things done by our teams on behalf of our customers. Ideas transformed to reality, products or services to market. Thankfully, I've got a great team of people I work with here in the UK and a fantastic group of super talented staff over in Vietnam. And I'm delighted to have the opportunity to speak to you today, offer my thoughts on various aspects of delivery, hopefully give you some insight and some food for thought about how to turn your innovative solutions or ideas into reality. Now, for the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to assume that you have a fantastic product idea and that you want to get to market quickly and you have some investment to make it happen. Next slide, please, Dan. Okay, so in terms of an agenda today, I wanted to kind of touch on digital competition in 2020. Those of us who've been in the industry for the last decade will have seen a dramatic increase in the number of IT products and services across all sectors. But what does this mean for delivery? I want to mention distributed teams and how that's affected how we work. And I've then tried to condense the essence of software delivery into a non-technical analogy, and we'll see how that goes. And we'll then touch on the challenges of project estimation. And I have another simple analogy on architecture to help convey the importance of speed and flow when delivering. I'll then spend a few minutes comparing the main delivery approaches and talking about one at a high level, but with a focus on the human behaviours that are vital for good outcomes. And by then, I hope to have covered the how, but do need to talk about the who and the where, i.e., can you do it all yourself, or do you need help in the form of a technical partner like NashTech or any others? Next slide, please, Dan. Okay, so the world continues to accelerate its digitization, uncovering new insights, new products and services springing up, disrupting traditional market segments, and more manual, repeatable processes are being digitized and automated. Identification and rapid mobilization of solutions can have enormous benefits to society and the individual. Digital transformation and globalization means the marketplace for successful products has never been larger, but equally those opportunities exist for shorter and shorter periods. You have to move fast to beat the competition. Next slide, Dan. And if that wasn't enough, we have a global pandemic to reckon with. This has meant a profound change to how most companies operate, overnight enforced distributed working. This was extremely challenging, even in the tech sector, and we certainly saw an impact back in April with some projects stopping or pausing when we were working. However, technology, human adaptation has meant that many things can carry on, evidently as well as before, if not better in some cases. And enforced distribution also made many organizations realize that traditional centralized working models are by no means essential. And there are in fact significant advantages to distributed teams, particularly in terms of well-being, time and cost savings of not needing offices or as much travel. In my view, this strengthens the opportunity that delivery partners like NashTech have, because the perceived hurdle that you have to be in one physical location to be effective has proven to be a myth. Now, I'm extremely thankful that we have access to all this technology now, because if COVID had happened, 20 years ago, it would have been even more catastrophic. Next slide, Dan. So I'll attempt to give you a suitable analogy to help visualize software delivery. I don't want to put anyone off, but it can sometimes feel like this. For software delivery to be successful and achieve the aim of delivering a working product, in my opinion, you're walking on a tightrope. You have to commit and you have to have a clear sense of direction. Your balance and therefore your pace will continually be affected by your response to feedback about your progress. In commercial software development, the pace at which you can traverse the rope is critical. The longer you take, the higher the cost, and the greater the likelihood the destination is obsolete or someone else has got there first. You want to be able to stride predictably and confidently across. You've heard of the main parameters of project delivery as time, quality, scope, and cost. Firstly, I prefer to think of time in terms of the speed of getting the work done. The slower your progress, the longer delivering the scope will take, and therefore costs are likely to increase. Alternatively, you may be prepared to accept a high number of defects or issues with an early version of your product, allowing the pace of delivery to speed up. Then again, you may have to accept the speed you are traveling and not be able to compromise on quality, and thus your only option is to take scope out, shortening the tightrope, and aim to reach the other side on time. Like actually traversing the rope, in order to take confident strides and have confidence that you will reach the other side, you need to regularly assess changes. If the team are getting bogged down in a difficult design issue or trying to achieve some kind of quality perfection and are therefore going slower, you need to know that and adjust accordingly. Next slide, please. Oh, I guess there's some animations here. Probably tap a couple of times again, please, Dan. And again, actually. Thank you. My advice is to define a destination product or solution that isn't too far away. Oh, sorry, that's gone too far. Thank you. Okay, so the length of the rope in the analogy is proportional to the scope of the product, what features or functions it has. There are two primary approaches you can take here. Now, on the left-hand side, you can think about everything you need now, a fully exhaustive set of world-beating features and functions, nicely documented and usually in need of approval from many other stakeholders. You know, and obviously the stakes are high. Until recently, this was often the approach that was taken in large organizations particularly, and it gets very expensive because there's so many people involved. Alternatively, you can define the almost but not quite minimum set of features you need. You need enough to get meaningful feedback from real customers, but also enough contingency to take some scope out if you were delivering slower than expected, as I said before, the picture on the right. The implication here being that B is much shorter. This means the tightrope spans a shorter distance. This increases the chance of at least making it across. And in delivery parlance, we refer to this as the minimum viable product, MVP. And defining it maximizes chances that the destination is still relevant. In the worst case, if the product falls on its face, you know earlier, you've spent less time and money, you can identify lessons, and you can change course more quickly than you otherwise would have done. In other words, if you're going to fail, fail fast. Now, I imagine the height of the rope is analogous to the size of the team, the cost of infrastructure, licenses, and other running costs. And total cost, height of the rope, and the length of time it takes to traverse the length. And ideally, the rope needs to be short and close to the ground. Next slide, please. Thanks. So personally, I find predicting the future pretty difficult, which is why cost estimates for delivering products is really challenging, especially when the product is new and unique. You have no historical information on which to base a cost on. And generally speaking, the further into the future you look, the greater the uncertainty will be. So projects with a large scope that have longer sequences to deliver are much less certain. And by reducing the scope, you increase certainty on time and cost. You could attempt to analyze everything up front, but this takes time. And while you're analyzing, the very reasons for doing the project may well have changed. I've been involved in projects in the past where early phases have been delayed through too much analysis, and invariably this has led to subsequent phases like implementation and testing to be squeezed so that the original end date and costs can still be met. So if you're on the tightrope, it's like being stood there for a while, waiting to see what happens, then asked to sprint at the end. It often meant that much of the work required and designed was de-scoped, which is a complete waste. Worse still, there will be pressure on the implementation and test teams, leading to drops in quality and poorer outcomes all round, especially when you consider the emotional impact this can have on people. So estimate, in my view, as late as possible, for as little as possible. And if you have to estimate, be cautious and caveat your costs appropriately. And as soon as you have more certainty, update your stakeholders. Next slide, please. Thanks. So the other really effective way of removing uncertainty is by simplifying or better decoupling your design and architecture. This is, of course, another enormous topic in its own right, but I just want to mention the term microservices to you. Conceptually, the idea is to decouple functionality and data into cohesive vertical molecules, if you like, or like molecules. Change in one does not impact the other, keeping dependencies to a minimum, like bonds between atoms. You don't want a rigid structure. Liquids flow better than solids. Having technical dependencies in order to deliver features causes things to tighten up, slowing down progress. Next slide, please. Okay. This is a really powerful picture showing the benefits an agile approach can bring, and certainly how it's better suited to today's challenges. Getting product to your customers quickly, getting feedback and changing things if required. An agile approach is based on small steps of completed production-ready software. And in some circumstances, actually waterfall can have its place. For example, if you're trying to implement change in an existing complex, tightly coupled architecture. But to deliver quickly, you should strive to avoid this where possible, in my opinion. Next slide, please, Dan. Thanks. Now, anyone who's tried walking on a tightrope will know that the key to maintaining balance is to focus on the destination, look forward and rely on feedback from your brain to make constant micro adjustments as you move. In other words, dynamic equilibrium. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes describing a particular framework of agile delivery called Scrum. However, do keep in mind that there's tons of information available online, and this is just scratching the surface. Typically in Scrum, the team work in fortnightly sprints. They plan out the highest priority items listed on a product backlog. The sprint planning is normally held on the first day of the sprint in a specific session, unsurprisingly called sprint planning, and the backlog is refreshed every sprint. Thus, the team are delivering the highest value features at the earliest opportunity. Now, in my mind, these fortnightly sprints are the steps you're taking on the tightrope. You know you're going to take a step, and the only question is, what length will that step be? How much rope will you cover? And just like on a tightrope, the first steps may be a little tentative and short, but like any learning curve, you'd expect to see that improve and become more predictable. Using Scrum, particular metrics are captured, and these can be used to extrapolate how long it will take to deliver the MVP we mentioned before, and therefore the likely cost of reaching the other side. And knowing this with some certainty early can help take corrective action. Compare this with more traditional approaches, where progress is much harder to visualize and the reasons for a slow pace not understood. In waterfall, you really don't know where you are. Now, the objective is to get through the agreed scope in a particular sprint and then demonstrate working functionality at the end of each fortnight. And it's real. You're doing the demonstration, so you're going to get really good quality feedback from your customers. Of course, there's many things that can go wrong here. Perhaps the functionality doesn't fulfill the criteria. There may be too many bugs. Something may have happened during sprint, which slowed things down. But the important point is you know all this after 2 weeks rather than several months. So the sprint retrospective itself is also a really important meeting. This is where the whole team get together and look at why sprint goals weren't achieved. This can be uncomfortable. It relies on disclosure, airing of concerns, being truthful with others and yourself. Ultimately, though, with the right positive behaviors, this strengthens the team and identifies changes to be made to the process to speed things up. There's a couple of animations, Dan, if you could just flick through at the bottom, and I'll just talk about the roles. Yeah, there's probably 3, I think, if you could just click on those. Thank you. The main roles identified in Scrum are product owner, Scrum master, and the team, normally a total group of less than 10 people. Now, given many people on this call's interest in this event, I'd imagine all of you will either fulfill or interact with one of these roles in the future. None of the roles is more important than the other, and all of them are the brain of the person on the tightrope. The product owner is the conscience. They represent the business, they define what good looks like, and ultimately they have to balance cost and quality. If the team are not traversing the tightrope quickly enough, they can decide to remove scope, shortening the rope, and keep to a budget. Scrum has collaboration and feedback at its heart. Feedback is crucial to maintaining balance on the tightrope, enabling you to move forward at a predictable rate toward your goal. Now, you've been working in a hothouse environment for the last few days, and I'm sure you can see the benefit of working in this way in terms of how quickly you can understand and build on ideas, how traits of openness and honesty can enable the most effective conversations. Now, given the backdrop of accelerating digitization, competition, and disruption, all in a world of algorithms, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, the more digital the world becomes, I think it's somewhat comforting to know that success and efficiency in delivering these projects is most profoundly impacted by humans working together. So the Scrum Master is there to ensure that the team are doing what they said they would, working toward a set of acceptance criteria, a definition of done. They will lead the resolution of problems and help insulate the team from changes just during this 2-week period. The Scrum Master is a fantastic role in any organization. As well as working with the teams dynamically and being an active part of the delivery, they're there to act on systemic causes of feedback from the teams through the retrospective and push an agile mindset further into the organization as a whole. Next slide, please. So in order to respond quickly to an opportunity in the market, you need to mobilize the right capability quickly. Of course, you could already be working in an organization with the technical and behavioral skills needed. Equally, you may not. Now, organizations like NashTech offer partnership models where we can provide oven-ready teams of agile-minded people with technical skill sets in most areas to help deliver the product with you. It's really up to you how much of the overall team you'd like based offshore, but our aim is for it to feel very much like one team. As I said before, the pandemic has demonstrated that setting up and delivering using distributed teams is perfectly achievable. As a business, we've done this numerous times this year. But what are the right partnership behaviors? Firstly, you need to have a clear vision for what you want to achieve, and you need to share it so the team buy in and understand it. You need to encourage discussion and feedback about the vision and take other points of view. Feedback is the most valuable fuel for positive change. You need to strive to interact daily using video or for the non-verbal cues and set aside time to meet the team in a less formal way to build trust further and to get to know the people. The best way to know if you can trust someone is simply to trust them straight away. Recently, it's been a particularly interesting time for NashTech. We've shown we can be a natural extension to many UK businesses and deliver successfully without any real face-to-face interaction. In fact, the only thing we can't control is the time zone difference, but even that can work advantageously by having a set routine and some simple discipline between the teams in the UK and our teams in Vietnam. Final slide, I think, please, Dan. Thank you. So, in summary, what can I leave you with for the future? Well, the world is becoming increasingly digitized and interconnected. And with all other things being equal, good ideas and delivery speed is your way of beating the competition. We know that change is constant, so you need to strive constantly to maintain balance and keep moving forward. Listen and act on feedback. Now, when designing, you can help yourself by keeping things simple and not having too many dependencies. And I'd also like to strongly advise that you increase your knowledge of Agile and using all those fantastic resources online. But understand the right behaviors to make this work. Organizations and projects ultimately stand or fall by good teamwork. either within your organization or with a partner like us. Focus on collaboration, be trusting and open, get comfortable giving and receiving feedback. Next slide, I think. Indeed. So thanks for your time. I hope there's been some food for thought that will help you and your teams in future. Thanks.
Thanks, Jon. Thanks for that. I don't know if anybody's got any questions for Jon while we've got him. You can always use the chat facility at the side. A couple of comments coming in, obviously. Thanks, Helen. I think you're absolutely right. That really brings what the teams have been going through around kind of working agilely and using the hothouse design thinking methodology. Really kind of brings it to life. So thank you for that. Thanks, Rachel. Glad you enjoyed it. If anybody's got any questions, we're going to be hanging on for the next couple of minutes for Jon. But Neil, Dan, any comments to make? Anything? Any questions you have for Jon?
No, nothing specific. I think I've just kind of echoed that you know, the changes that we've seen have made a great difference, and I think the agile way of working is certainly becoming more prevalent now. You've seen it more across businesses. I know certainly we're seeing more of that in our line of work. The waterfall is definitely getting left behind, and the agile is certainly coming to the fore. Jon, do you think there's any limitations at all from your perspective of using agile over waterfall?
I think culturally there can be people perhaps of, you know, my vintage and older who've got that innate resistance to change and just want to go with what they know. And I think agile, although on the face of it it's quite simple conceptually, there's, you know, the more that I've been involved in delivering an agile, there's some really kind of deep and profound knowledge that you need to run it effectively, and it needs to pervade through the whole team, and that can be a big challenge for organizations in terms of their readiness to move to an agile model. But really, I see there's so many benefits in pushing it as the priority way of delivering, especially now the way that technology has evolved and things are so much more granular and compartmentalized. Yeah. But I do think where waterfall has its place is where you've got, you know, tightly coupled, lots of change across multiple systems and perhaps integrated businesses that need to happen at the same time, and that's really difficult to achieve in an agile mode. There is, of course, scaled agile models as well, which build on these more straightforward concepts, but it's a question of, you know, organizing. I think the time will come where, apart from big non-technical infrastructure projects, HS2, etc., you know, that will be the bastion of waterfall approaches.
Okay.
Great. We've got a question actually coming from Helen. Helen asks, do you think that COVID has permanently changed kind of how we work to more remote working? Or do you think we'll go back to how we used to work before?
Yeah, my personal view is yes, it has. I think it's made people realize, you know, this kind of enforced distribution of working. It's made people realize that sessions like this can happen. You know, it's not quite as effective as the real thing, but it's, in terms of the content and the message and adapting how we interact, it's proven it can work to a large extent. So I think there will be a rebound, but perhaps, you know, again, back to balance, it's going to come back to somewhere in the middle, I think, because of all the benefits we've seen of time and you know, work-life balance, not having to commute, doing things effectively remotely, but equally the need for human interaction is really strong. I mean, for instance, you know, clearly with our teams out in Vietnam, we've had absolutely no chance to see those guys, and I think when we're able to, the first thing we'd like to do is to see them, you know, personally at some point in the future, probably middle of next year at this point.
yeah, definitely.
It does. Right. It definitely opens up, I think, an opportunity for organisations, doesn't it? So I think on two levels, given, you know, the areas that we're both operating in, I think Humberside as a region, you know, we were talking the other day through the tech event, that suddenly it opens up Humberside as an area that tech can really be delivered in, and people can do really exciting things here, whereas traditionally maybe it hasn't been. And then, as you say, you know, your partnership and supplier options are just opened up even more exponentially through this, and you've just got so many proof points now, I think, within the last 6 to 12 months that show that it can work really well.
That's why it's so great for customers and suppliers, because the kind of proximity question is a moot point now. It's a great leveler in that respect, and we've been forced to do it, and actually you can see it's working. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I think we are out of questions, so thank you very much, Jon. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to us today. And that is our last speaker session of the day, and actually of the event. So there you go, out with a bang. Join us. I'm just sending out the emails now for your pitch slots at between 1 and 2. We may slightly go over 2 o'clock. We've had a lot of people come back and ask for a pitch slot, so bear with if you're slightly over the 2 o'clock time. And don't forget to have your final submissions in with us by 12 o'clock today. I'll be doing a scrape of the system around about 1:15, just so we've got plenty of time to read your submissions before the judging begins at 1. So thanks again, and I hope you enjoyed the event.